What are some of the inaccurate things you have to ignore in your fandom's canon material? For example, cats cannot see red or orange shades of color, but in the Warrior Cats novels, cats narrate blood as red and cats are flame-colored or russet. They also always meow at each other, even though cats rarely use meows to communicate unless they're mother and kitten. This is just from a biological point of view. Let's not get into the hell-heaven parallels in religion they have going on. Another example is that in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the quantum realm makes absolutely no sense, starting with my main gripe, the name, because quantum means a small amount of something, to paraphrase the monster of a definition my Google search gave me. I feel like Hank Pym should have been aware of this. Also, somehow his wife ages Wilson there, but Ant-Man doesn't. Credit to Reddit user LennyLicious for starting this thread on the fanfiction subreddit. And let's go read some answers. Ant-Man is played by Paul Rudd. Him aging would just be unrealistic. You are so correct. I defer to you. Oh man, don't even try bringing biology into Warrior Cats. Apprentices are old enough to have kits, but they never do. It appears that these cats don't even go into heat. They form romantic relationships and decide they want a family like humans. Medicine cats are usually able to swear vows of chastity. Some female cats want to keep pumping out kits and remain the queen rank, and some of them decide to have one litter and be done. They are kid books, but yeah. The entire timeline of Miraculous Ladybug is pure guesswork, but it does appear that Valentine's Day comes before Christmas. Also, the main character seems to have come to terms with his mother's death a mere month or two after she disappeared. I've seen complaints centering around the Miraculous Ladybug timeline, but never thought it was this bad. Avatar: The Last Airbender and its inaccurate/inconsistent portrayal of mental illness, specifically post-canon Azula in the comics. I write only with the show canon, and my personal headcanons as someone who has a mental illness in real life, in mind on that one. Azula's symptoms are all over the place in the comics, and it seems she has a different disorder in every panel. Sadly though, this isn't a problem specific to Avatar: The Last Airbender. Lots of shows and movies portray mental illness poorly and further the stigma and lack of understanding. People in fantasy medieval settings probably do not have modern underwear, or shaved legs, or shaved anything. True, but women did pluck their hair to have high foreheads, which people conveniently don't mention when they talk about the great beauties. Oh, this one pisses me off royally. It's accepted canon for Persona 5 that the story takes place in 2016. However, all the dates are the same as 2017, and dates matter because of how the game advances time. That means whenever I write, I have to write around saying what year it is because it bothers me so goddamn much. What a stupid thing to get angry about. Ignoring all the stuff that defies our laws of nature and just focusing on the stuff that contradicts the in-book rules, Rick Riordan is really bad at keeping tabs of his timeline. Some characters' ages just straight up don't make any sense. Oh, and also, one of the girls gets turned into a tree as a kid and later emerges as a teenager. But her age then doesn't match the time that has passed since she was turned into a tree. Also, one guy is 19, except when he's not, because he's younger or older. Fabulous example. You know the timeline is effed up when the author himself gets it all wrong. In Voltron, Keith's mother is an alien. The problem is that humans and aliens would be genetically incompatible. I secretly went around that by saying Galras have magic shape-shifting DNA or something like that. I don't even attempt to explain genetics. A bunch of aliens are going to be having babies with other aliens, and I'm not going to even attempt to explain why or how. I have to overlook or hand-wave a lot of stuff involving how farms and ranches actually work. I do try to at least keep growing time in mind. Sometimes. Since when I write, I use the 365-day 12-month calendar, rather than the 4-season, 116 to 124-day calendars they use in the game. But I do have to ignore a lot all the same. My main fandom is a police procedural. I ignore a lot of police brutality that they should have basically all been fired for already. One of the characters I like to write for is an Interpol agent. Well, fiction's idea of an Interpol agent anyway. The international police officer who can arrest whoever they want, whenever they want. Of course, Interpol doesn't actually work that way, so I ended up thinking of an explanation of how the character in question managed to do what they did within the real-world restrictions of their agency. Yeah, if you're doing anything with some kind of government agency, law enforcement, doctors, etc., there's a whole lot of "that's not how that works in real life" stuff you gotta wade through. Listen, I had to write, and I kid you not, something the size of The Lord of the Rings just to properly ignore all the logical inconsistencies in the world building of She-Ra and the Princesses of Power. They really do hand-wave a whole-ass war and the legit removal, deaths, and successions of multiple potential nations. No, listen, what do they eat in the Horde? Where did they get all the metal for all those weird-ass buildings? What purpose do those buildings serve? Bright Moon is seemingly just a freaking palace. Who built it? What populace is Angela taxing to fund the war? What is Glimmer a commander of exactly? Where is the standing army? And for the record, why are we glorifying monarchic rule? What happened to democracy is the worst form of governance except for all the others? Why can Nitosa and Spinnerella do elemental magic without runestones? How do they get around? How big is this planet even? Why did Scorpia's personal gunship feature only in Season 1, Episode 8, and never again? How can Catra 1 jump several times her own body height, 2 cut metal with her fingernails, and 3 go toe-to-toe with She-Ra? You don't understand how many gripes I have with this show. And I love it to bits. I love it so much. And that's not to mention the fandom. Sonic characters are teens. Well, most of them at least. But you don't see or hear anything about them being teens. It doesn't even have to be hormones, at least make them act like teens. Sonic Boom did really well at this. Why can't the main Sonic series? Is it really that much work to write Sonic, Shadow, Knuckles, Espio, or Silver acting like dumbass teens? Just because you constantly save the world doesn't mean you're not a teenager. This is such a problem that people learn how old the characters are and they're immediately like, wait, Sonic's how old? Because none of the characters act like teenagers. They act like adults. The comics do a better job at this though. The games are garbage at it. I know I was surprised when I found out how old Sonic characters are. Danny Phantom. He runs behind objects to go ghost, and while doing so, people are running away, drawn from running behind those objects, but never see him. Danny Phantom fanfiction writer here. Yes, the whole thing about transforming amongst a literal crowd of people is so dumb. Honestly, if I had my back towards him and I saw a flash of light behind me, even if it's within a wide distance, I would look. I usually ignore that BS and write him hiding behind stuff, or have someone warn him before he decides to transform, exposed, in a park with 100 people in close proximity. All the wolf instincts that the werewolf characters are said to have, like obeying their alpha. Canon even acknowledges at one point that real-world wolf packs don't have an alpha, but they hand-wave it. They also mention being able to smell when a woman is on her cycle and whether she's pregnant, which, okay, we have diabetes-sniffing dogs. I suppose hormonal changes aren't that ridiculous to be able to smell if you have a strong nose, but it'd make things damn awkward, so I elect to ignore that. Literally everything about how Christianity is portrayed, and almost everything about how other mythologies are portrayed. It was clearly written by someone who knows absolutely nothing about the former beyond scanning random terms, and only slightly more about the latter. My Final Fantasy VII fic includes events from the movie Advent Children, but the parts about the disease, geostigma, are just so poorly done I needed to revamp them. I think the wiki said that people got geostigma from weakness, which is just dumb. I retconned it so that there was a contamination of underground springs that people use for water, similar to how lead poisoning affects children's brains. The effects of geostigma were also super downplayed in canon, so I made it so that it basically destroys your liver and rots your skin. You are the light in the world. Thank you for taking the time to make something make more sense, even if the outcome is horrifying. I write in the Harry Potter fandom. You may want to pull up a chair. Chair pulled? What do you have in store for me, Doc? Well, these are not really biologically inaccurate as such. Those would be a bit pointless, because magic. But there is a ton of stuff that doesn't make sense to me, and I changed according to what fits me, with post-canon liberties. Wizarding economics. I gave up on trying to work around this and removed a whole plot point. I read actual articles about this and still can't make the heads or the tails. Wizards not knowing anything about the Muggle world. Rubber ducks, really? The Hogwarts sorting system. People, least of all small kids, are not a laundry list of character traits that you can just slap a label on. They use parchment and quills rather than pen and paper. Parchment is stinky and slimy and not nice to write on. Erasing people's memories however it fits you. This should be an unforgivable curse. House elves. Mine are all free. I don't care what the canon elves say, I can't deal with this elf slavery business. The original Starsky and Hutch series gave the Hutchinson character 2 birth dates, May 28, 1948 in one episode, and October 25, 1944 in another. Many fic writers just use the actor's birthday for the character, ignoring the pre-VCR so who's gonna see it canon. Don't even get me started on a timeline for the series. Their canon mentions of time sound more like a TARDIS stuck on shuffle mode. I've had that issue in some fandoms too with characters' birthdays. Always fun trying to do the math and sort out that stuff. My go-to fandom is the Zelda franchise, and there is no shortage of canon inaccuracies or conundrums there. The Zelda Reddit groups and forums are full of debates over what is or isn't canon, the correct pronunciation of names, and whether the official timeline works or not. I wrote Zelda fic once that crossed over 2 games that aren't anywhere near each other in the canon timeline. Link's Awakening and Breath of the Wild. I tagged the fic with something like, canon typical timeline coherency, and called it good. As someone up thread put it, the canon timeline looks like the TARDIS got stuck on shuffle. Mine aren't so much based on factual inaccuracies, since Homestuck runs on its own logic and a lot of rather heavily biased POVs and narration. But like, in that universe, Guy Fieri is a genocidal monster. I tend to avoid mentioning that since he seems like such a sweet dude. Ditto the Insane Clown Posse, they seem like alright people. Having had to write the previous paragraph is just one of the many ways this dang fandom hurts me. Poor Guy Fieri. Travel time makes no sense. People traverse 1/3 of the continent in a day by foot and horse. If the continent was the size of a European country, I could maybe buy it for all canon travels, but I feel like I really had to take some creative liberties with it. And so, we traveled across Asia in a week. After the exhausting journey, we slept for a full day and rested our horses, before plunging into the dense jungles of Vietnam. What? Are we talking about the same Asia or the one on a toy globe? Trust no numbers. The authors of the canon material are notorious for using lots of completely bullshit numbers. Spaceship speeds, distances, traveling time, troop numbers, casualty rates, weapon impacts, explosive charges, etc. It's all nonsense. The numbers get retconned and contradicted all the time, and because this fandom in particular attracts lots of number-crunchy nerds, there's always people throwing a fuss about it. So to avoid frustration, or anyone vaguely savvy in math or militaria, if there's any numerical value mentioned, one must assume it doesn't have any basis in real-world physics or common sense, and ignore it. Yeah, authors, or creators in general really, are a group not generally known for their math skills. Oh, Twilight, bane of my existence and my fanfic haven. I love using Twilight as a jumping point because it's so easy to tweak and play with. Hell, you can even just ignore the canon vampire lore and move on. But we're talking inaccuracies. The Cullens cycle through a few places every few years to hide their immortality. There's never a given timeline for them staying away, only that they wait until people forget about them. However, Carlisle is a doctor, and would have to keep a job to keep up the facade. How would there be no record of a Dr. Carlisle Cullen? Did he avoid staff pictures? Also, just working in the medical field in general, did he never work on any research or make adjustments to procedures? There would definitely be records of him, and his name isn't common. Again, with the kids. Being in school, there would probably be yearbooks with their pictures in it, and those are gone over every once in a while for class reunions and just for layout inspiration. Did no one notice Edward's clone in the 40s? Almost everything. This shit's been made since 1935, and it has not become easier to understand with all its soft, hard, flaccid, and erect reboots. I don't even fully understand canon because it's comics, and they refuse to have any kind of sensible continuity. So basically, if I want to write for it, I just have to write for fandom blind people, because I cut so much confusing shit that even people who are in the fandom might not know all of the lore or which was cut. I will not poke comics with a 10-foot pole. This is the reason why. That is the much wiser thing to do. However, I am not a wise person. Big thank you to my Patreon members, my little ruse, Kuski55, Fallen Vexen, Sam, Donka42, I'm a Noodle, John Huang, Fantastic Wreck, Laser Scorpio, and Night Avenger. Thank you so much for your extra support on Patreon. It means the world to me. I hope you guys are doing well. I wish you all the very best. And the same goes to my YouTube channel members, my mini ruse, AD, Taylor Thompson, Foxstar Killer, Logan, and DeBella. Thank you so much for your extra support. I'm so glad to have you be a part of my channel. I hope you guys are doing well. Keep being awesome, all of my ruse. And thank you to everyone else who watched. I really appreciate it. Thanks for being here. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you had fun. And I would love to hear in the comments, what does your fandom have as an inaccuracy or inconsistency that you just kind of have to ignore when you're writing about the fandom because otherwise nothing will make sense? Please let me know and I'll read through your comments in the future. And I wish you guys a very good day.